started. In case you're lost, you have made it to the virtual world of what adult education is doing in Georgia. We have our guest speaker from this morning, Dr. Megan McBride, and we have her assistant, Miss Mary Baxter, and they are both going to be presenting. And we just kind of wanted to have an open forum of talking about what's going on in Georgia, what they're doing. I know that in Arkansas, we all collaborate, really well together and try to help each other out. So we just wanted to kind of check with you guys to see what was going on in Georgia that we could maybe borrow or use your ideas as well.
That's what we do in education. We plagiarize.
That's right.
Thank you, Dorissa, and welcome everybody. If y'all want to turn your cameras on, please feel free. I can see you. Mary and I are, like I mentioned this morning in the keynote, we are screen divas here. So we have all three of our screens. I'm sure Mary does up and going. We can see the chat. Excuse me. So what we're going to do is talk to you today about what we're doing in Georgia. And while we're talking, please feel free to comment things, ask us questions. We're nosy in Georgia. We want to know what you're doing in Arkansas. Sometimes we feel very siloed. Although I am on the board at COABE, I don't talk to anybody in any other states to know what's going on. So I'm very interested, Mary is too, to know what you all are doing over there in Arkansas in adult ed. And I'm going to operate under the assumption that I can speak the language of adult ed and that you all will be literate in that language because it is very technical. So if you don't understand anything, if we drop an acronym that you don't understand, just let us know in the chat and we'll clarify. Go ahead, Mary, to the next slide. So again, I'm Megan McBride, and I'm going to take off my adult learner hat that I had on this morning when I shared my story. And thank you all for, if you were there, for all the love that you gave me. And I'm so glad you're joining me here today to see what I do as a program administrator. So I serve as the Vice President for Adult Education at Georgia Piedmont Technical College in Metro Atlanta, Georgia. And I'm going to tell you a little bit about the program before we get into some of the details of the exciting work that we're doing here. And I have Mary Baxter with me. Mary Baxter is from the world of refugee resettlement, and she joined us in adult ed a couple years ago, right, Mary? Yeah. Mary started out working in our ESL program, and you're going to see she is a rock star. That's why I brought her along with me today, because a lot of the programs that we're going to share with you, Mary masterminded and brought to life as we vision cast what we wanted to do. And much of what we've done here has occurred during the pandemic. So we're a totally different program. We've completely evolved from where we were on March 12th, 2020, when COVID came to town and we had to shut down. So Mary now serves as our instructional coordinator for the program. So she oversees things like curriculum, instruction, and our IETs. So our job training programs, that's Mary's responsibility. All right, so I'm going to share with you about my adult education program so that you can kind of get an idea of what we look like and what we do. So we're an HSE program. We do adult basic education, HSE, whatever you want to call it, and English as a second language. So for many, many years, up until this year, in fact, we only offer the GED, but now we have two options here in Georgia for high school equivalencies. We actually have three, but my program has not yet adopted the third. But we do have GED and HiSET here. So we're trying our best to not say we're a GED program. It's very hard to do. We are an HSE program, or adult basic education, whatever you want to call it, ABE, HSE. That's what we do. We also have an English, and by the way, our GED program is the largest. Actually, right now we're the largest overall in Georgia, but for many years we have been the largest ABE program in the state of Georgia. We're right outside Metro Atlanta in DeKalb County. And we also serve the Metro Atlanta counties of Newton and Rockdale. Not that you know, but if you watched the recent election cycle, you learned a lot of Georgia counties as we were counting our ballots. We also have an ESL program, and I'll tell you a little bit more about both of those in the next slide. We recently created and are still sort of iterating a Ready Step Leap program, and Mary's going to tell you all about that because that has been her baby, but that's basically just our IETs. And then we also recently birthed, for lack of a better word, the Workplace Literacy Program, Mary, pull that one up. This is a flyer for our workplace literacy program. Now, I don't know if Arkansas has adopted workplace lit. Are y'all doing that yet? Yeah. Okay. So it hasn't rolled out in Georgia. But I learned about it, being able to use workplace literacy for MSGs very recently. So what we're doing here with our workplace literacy program, we're kind of selling to employers what we do. You can get free ESL classes for your employees or free ABE classes along with digital literacy or employability skills. So that's kind of our little clever way of getting MSGs in a little bit easier format than the TABE or Best Plus is trying to get them through, our employability program, which is called Georgia Best or North Star for digital literacy. So that's something new we're kicking off here at Georgia Piedmont. All right, we normally enroll, and typical is pre-pandemic. So prior to the pandemic, we would enroll between 3,000 and 4,000 students annually here at Georgia Piedmont in our adult ed program. But then came the pandemic, and I read in your conference program that you all suffered some enrollment declines. I think that was nationwide. We dropped significantly as a consequence of the pandemic for a number of reasons that you all probably experienced as well. But during the pandemic, we took that time when our teachers didn't have as many students to try and revolutionize the way we deliver instruction and reimagine our service delivery. And during the pandemic, our enrollment for many months was at 100% online. But if you average it out over the entire fiscal year, we were at 98% virtual enrollment during the pandemic. And 62% statewide. So we were much, much higher than the rest of the state. And that's probably because we were in the metro area. Early in the pandemic, metro areas were hit really hard and rural areas were kind of still able to carry on business as usual. So while we had our enrollment down really low, we pivoted a lot of our employees, a lot of our teachers to building our learning management system. And Mary's going to share with you about our learning management system because it's one of our proudest achievements during the pandemic. Currently we have the highest enrollment for the state of Georgia. So from the first year of the pandemic to this year, we've increased enrollment by about 100%. So we're double what we were during the pandemic. But pre-pandemic enrollment is still much higher. We should be probably twice where we are now, but we're still suffering here. So enrollment is low, but we are the highest in the state of Georgia, and I'm very proud of that. All right, so back to our GED and HiSET program. That enrollment is typically the bulk of our student enrollment. So remember, we normally 3,000 to 4,000 students. 2/3 of that is usually in our ABE program. And that covers 3 counties and also our county jail. So I do have a corrections program. We offer classes, and the pandemic allowed us to do this. Prior to the pandemic, we were 100% face-to-face. The only sort of remote options we had were Burlington English, and I'll see our friends at Burlington this morning. And we offered Essential Education, TABE Academy, GED Academy. But now we offer online and in-person options, morning, afternoon, and evening. So students can choose any option, whatever works for their needs, whatever is best for them to attend their classes. And I should add that our correctional facilities are also offered only remotely. So we do not have teachers going into the jails anymore. We stream our video into the jails and they log in through the learning management system. So it's safer. And as we found out, it's more convenient to keep our teachers out of jail. And that has been at the request of our sheriffs. They want to keep the jail instruction remote. So it's working well for us. We're tabing remotely in the jails. The only thing that we do physically is take the GED in the jail. Everything else is done remotely. And we also have the largest corrections program in the state of Georgia. We normally have about 250 incarcerated students each year, but that's been difficult with the pandemic. But all right, the ESL program. That program is currently only in DeKalb County. We used to have one of our other counties, but staffing has been a challenge. I don't know if you all are having labor issues in Arkansas. But we've had a hard time staffing out in our Rockdale County. Currently, we're in DeKalb. DeKalb is very, very diverse. And we're actually situated in a city, Clarkston. And Clarkston is the most diverse square mile in Georgia. It's a federal refugee resettlement city. So we see a lot of refugees. That's why we have such diversity here, because they're coming from all over the world. We serve about 1,000 students annually in ESL. And during the pandemic, our enrollment in the ESL program was the highest in the state at 700 students. So we still managed to serve a lot of English language learners in the midst of this existential crisis. Our students represent 50 countries and speak 70 languages. And Mary, again, she's our ESL expert here, so she could talk a lot more about what we offer in the ESL program than I can, but we have new Americans in our program, and as I said, refugees and immigrants. And we do receive a grant to instruct refugees. So we're very proud of the work that we do with our refugees, and we're expecting a lot to come in from Afghanistan very soon. And same thing with ESL. We offer I should add, all of our classes are leveled. So a 100 level or a level 1, ASE 1, I'm sorry, ABE 1 or ESL 1, they're only in classes with other level 1s, level 2s. So you won't see a 6 in a class with a 1. As large as we are, we have the ability to level all of our classes. So that's another benefit of having such a large program. But our ESL classes are also, just like ABE, offered morning, afternoon, and evening, and students can choose to join online or in person. Okay, so as I mentioned in my keynote, I tried a little bit to explain how we're situated here in Georgia. So all of our not all, but 22 out of 26 adult education programs in Georgia are affiliated with a college. And there are 22 technical colleges throughout the state of Georgia. So that's kind of our parent, right? And so we report to the Office of Adult Education, sort of. And so they have initiatives that they want us to implement, and then we kind of get the autonomy to implement them as we see fit. And so the initiatives that we're going to share with you that we did today locally as a consequence of the state of Georgia implementing them was our statewide learning management system, which many of you may have heard of. It's called Blackboard. I don't know if you've heard of Blackboard. Good. So we're going to talk about how we implemented that. And a rubric that we use to ensure that our Blackboard classes were of high quality. And then finally, our IET stuff. And IET, to me, is where adult ed is going in the future. We're no longer going to be literacy classes only. It is a job training program. So we're going to talk about what we're doing here with regard to IET and things like grading funding, through WIOA, and how we're getting our students prepared and the mistakes that we've made along the way. All right, so when all these, the Blackboard initiative certainly that was not happening prior to the pandemic. Blackboard is something that we created in response to the pandemic. We had a lot of trouble pivoting to remote learning. So when the pandemic shut us down, as I mentioned before, we had exactly 0 online classes. We had nothing online unless you wanted to log into Burlington or Essential Ed. We didn't have anything, not a learning management system, not any sort of video classes or web conferencing or anything going on. So when the pandemic shut us down, we kind of stood up what we were able to stand up really quickly. And then we spent the next 9 months to creating this Blackboard learning management system. And as a leader, it was probably the biggest challenge of my life. And certainly professionally, maybe not, you all know my life story. Probably not personally, but professionally, it was one of the biggest challenges I had ever experienced. I had no idea how to lead in a pandemic. So I relied on my team, people like Mary Baxter. We got so close in the pandemic. So I created new positions in my division. I created new teams. And that allowed us to create these really exciting products. Our Blackboard learning management system, which has been borrowed across the state. We were the very first, and for a long time, the only program in the state of Georgia to have a learning management system functioning in all levels for ESL, ABE, and corrections. And we're really excited about that. And then our Ready Step Leap program is the same thing everybody's doing basically with IETs. It just has our little twist on it. So I'm really excited to share these with you because I'm very, very proud of the work that we've been able to do in the midst of a pandemic And it's exciting to share it with you here in Arkansas. So I think at this point I hand it over to Mary. Do I? I don't know. Yes.
Yes, thank you so much, Dr. McBride. And thank you all for letting us be here. It really is a privilege to talk with people from another state. And we certainly hope to have a little bit of opportunity to dialogue at the end of this presentation. But we're just excited to share. So I'm going to share a little bit more about the details of what Dr. McBride shared, kind of an overview about, and I'm excited to do that. And please, if you have questions in the chat, I may not explain things quite detailed enough. So please let me know if I can, if you have any questions throughout this. But as Dr. McBride shared, before the pandemic, we were strictly paper-based. So we had a lot of paper around us. We still have a lot of paper, but especially at that time, we had a lot of paper. Classes were exclusively in person. And I would even say that we had some resistance when we tried to bring in some technology before the pandemic. Our students would struggle with it a little bit, and our teachers, frankly, a lot of them were just not prepared and not comfortable with technology. And so it was not something we pushed very hard before the pandemic, but as you all have experienced, just like us, we had to make it work. And so we were able to shift when the pandemic hit, and we began online classes, our first online classes, within 2 weeks of our building closure. And that was the result of a lot of hard work from our team and our teachers and staff. So we had just a couple of classes going within those first 2 weeks. And then we were making it up as we went. We tried a lot of different things. We would try different platforms. And so we started with just this new way of designing our program, and we kind of built it as we went. And it has gradually led to the flexible offerings that we talk about now. And we really consider distance education to be an integral component of our program. Through this whole process. And ultimately it led to the use of Blackboard, our very robust learning management system. And I saw some nodding heads when Dr. McBride asked about Blackboard. So I'm hoping that means many of you are familiar with it, or at least with a learning management system, so that you'll have a better idea of what I'm going to talk about. And just as a background, we had no experience in Blackboard. None of our staff had seen it before. We hadn't worked on it before. It was completely new to us. And so when we found out this was coming down through our state office to our colleges, Dr. McBride, like she said, put a team together. And so we started working together to figure out how to do this. So how were we going to build this platform? We really wanted to do it in a thoughtful way rather than just making it up as we went. And so we spent a fair amount of time up front preparing, planning, coming up with ideas, and then scratching them and coming up with different ideas, so that we, when we began actually building out the platform and rolling students onto it, it was a very seamless, easy experience because we put a lot of work into it up front. And it really gave us the opportunity to collaborate interdepartmentally, which we had not done much before. Our ESL and ABE departments were pretty separate, but this gave us the opportunity to come together, work together. So from the beginning, collaboration really was a key to the success of this project. And it ultimately helped us to build a better platform and a better experience for our students. So we offered off kind of a central vision from the beginning. We wanted to create a platform that first aligned with our main college's platform, because GPTC on the credit side actually uses Blackboard for their students. And so we wanted to create something that was cohesive, so that if students moved to the credit side, they were familiar with the structure and how it works. We wanted to pull that into our design. We wanted to make sure that we were increasing in complexity to meet our students' needs. So our beginning level ESL students would need a very simple version of the platform as compared to our ABE students. And so we divided out the levels within Blackboard so that we could have that increase in complexity for our students as they progress through the program. And then finally, we just wanted it to be accessible to our adult education students because many of them had not seen these kinds of platforms before. And so we wanted to make it very easy, just a few clicks and they were to the place that they needed to be. So here is a picture or a screenshot of our college credit side Blackboard page. And as you can see, it's geared towards post-secondary education. It's a lot of information overload actually. It's very text heavy, so this would be very overwhelming for an English language learner. It's got advanced English. It's a very difficult platform to navigate. So this is what we were working with. This is our challenge, to take something like this and to make it accessible to our adult education students. And particularly, we had the added challenge of our non-native speakers. So this is what I felt like. I think this is what a lot of my team members felt like when we were told to build adult ed onto Blackboard. We're like, wait a second, you want us to do what? I don't know about this. And so that was my first reaction. But you know, we took up the challenge, and it really was a fun challenge because it allowed for a lot of creativity and thinking outside the box, especially because this really hadn't been done much. You don't see a lot of learning management systems built out for adult education. It's just not there. And so it ended up being a fun project. And so I'm going to show you a couple of examples of how we built it so that you can have a visual for what I'm talking about. So this is our beginning ESL class design for Blackboard. So you can see it's very different from the credit side, but it still maintains the integrity of the structure. So we took out a lot of that complex language. We made it very simple. There's not a lot for students to read. There's not a lot for students to have to click on. We also wanted to maintain similar labels, so but use different words that were more understandable. So if you'll see on the right side, there's a larger picture of the menu. So typically in the ABE Blackboard and on the credit side, you see announcements. Well, for our beginning students, we use class news. So it's the same concept, but the words are different. We just used an easier phrase for them to understand. The same with teacher, email, and phone number. That's a long phrase, but they would not understand instructor contact, which is what you see on the credit side. So we're trying to keep the structure the same, but simplify it for our students who would not be able to access that higher language. So then moving through our levels, this is one of our advanced ESL Blackboard pages. So you can see that it's similar, but there's a lot more language, more for students to look at. The labels are starting to reflect what you would see on the ABE and credit side. So we've started to use announcements, instructor contact, things that students would be able to understand at this point. These are our advanced students. And then finally, this is our ABE and HSE Blackboard page. So again, it's increasing in complexity, but still simple enough for our adult education students to navigate, because even our ABE and HSE students may need some simplification of this platform so that they can access it and use it. So that's a kind of a very broad overview of how we structured and designed Blackboard. And of course, we'd be happy to dialogue more about that, with anyone who would like to know more. And I'm going to talk just briefly about our distance education rubric. Now, this is actually a tool that was given out by our state, by the Technical College System of Georgia. And so they designed this as an evaluation tool, especially as programs move to distance education and we didn't really have frameworks or ways to evaluate in all, in those platforms and situations. And so they created this rubric. And what we did was we also took it and used it to build out our Blackboard so that we could make sure that we were meeting the state standards and that we were doing our content and building out our platform in a way that would give us high rankings and help our instructors with that. So this is the categories are on the left. So you'll see there's learning objectives and standards, right? What all the states want to see. They want to see that we're following objectives and standards. Emphasis on community and support. So that is making sure that instructors are pulling in prior knowledge. Applied learning is tying their learning to real life experiences. And yes, in answer to a question in the chat, we do embed lessons into Blackboard, but we can't embed specific things from Burlington English and Essential Education. So if we have time, we'll talk a little bit more about that. And then the last two categories are peer-to-peer interaction, so communication among students, and then mastery of concepts. And so these were the 5 categories that the state identified as really important components of distance education. And so I'm going to show a couple of examples from our ESL Blackboard content so that you have an idea of how we used the rubric. So here's category 1, learning objectives and standards. So you can see the standards are the first thing that show up in a lesson. And they're in very easy I can statements so that students know what they are learning. It also helps the teachers as they're planning their lessons. It kind of takes the burden off of trying to connect those standards to the lesson. So all of that is already built into Blackboard for them. So emphasis on community and support. We have some activities and then pull in, prior learning for students. So maybe students learn something from a video and then have a chance to practice it in the content. Applied learning. So with this lesson, it's the story of an immigrant and their own immigrant experiences and stories, and connect that to the content that they're learning about this particular story. And then 2 more. So peer-to-peer interaction. These we use discussion boards a lot. That's a feature in Blackboard. We don't use some of the more complicated features, but discussion boards are easily things that our more advanced students can do. And then when we have synchronous classes, we also use breakout groups and things like that to facilitate peer-to-peer interaction. And then finally, the 5th category, mastery of concepts. We use the assessment feature a lot in Blackboard and are able to build out quizzes or assessments or things that students can do once they finish a lesson to ensure that they understand the concepts and the content. So that's one of the ways that we check on mastery of concepts. Okay, so
I'm going to tackle that question in the chat.
yes, I was just looking at that question. So so TCSG, our state office, gave all colleges access to Blackboard, and they provided the student licenses, and they have paid for the whole system for us. And so that is a huge benefit that we've gotten from our state office. So that is why we're using Blackboard. And we're one of the colleges who really took it and ran with it. There are varying levels of how colleges are using it, but yes, it's accessible for all of the colleges in Georgia.
Yeah, and I'll add to that. Before the pandemic, only our credit programs, which is our certificate, diploma, and degree programs, had Blackboard. When the pandemic started, we began to poke the college president, like, can we please get in your Blackboard something? Let us do something, because we had an a la carte method, as I mentioned in the chat. We were using Google Classroom and Canvas and all kind of stuff to reach our students. And I, as an administrator, I wanted everything in one place. so that I could view the instruction whenever I wanted, so that Mary as instructional coordinator could organize our curriculum, and that we have some kind of control over what we were doing, and also have students in one place. It was very confusing for this teacher to be in Google Classroom and this teacher to be in Canvas. So our college gave us access to Blackboard to start developing something. So we kind of started in there, and then we migrated into our own Blackboard. So now Georgia has 3 Blackboards, one for the credit side, one for adult ed, and one for continuing ed. So it's still a little confusing if a student happens to be in somehow all 3 of those. But we have our own that our system office paid for. Thankfully, we don't have to put out any funds for that. And then I wanted to reiterate that we use Collaborate. So our students are not necessarily going in, so they do go into Blackboard and do some of these activities, but a lot of it is done really through Collaborate in a synchronous manner. So, you know, just like we are now, it's just in Collaborate. And so they might go through these activities together as a class, but not necessarily the students going in and doing all this on their own.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
So, go ahead,
and also to answer again the question about Burlington English and Essential Ed. So we use both of those programs, and we have gotten permission to structure our Blackboard content around the way those platforms or programs are structured. And so while we don't actually put the content in to Blackboard, we've aligned our Blackboard to match those pretty well and to provide some supplemental material. Yes, so Canvas, I see Canvas is a very similar, Canvas is essentially the same thing as Blackboard, just a different company. So that is a very broad brushed overview of Blackboard, and hopefully was understandable and not too overwhelming. But now I'm going to transition and talk about our Ready Step Leap program, which is another initiative that we're really excited about, that has occurred over the past year, really. And so, as you all know, there really is a large movement towards IETs and combining adult education and workforce development. And that is nationwide. That's the direction that adult education is moving in. And so really this program is our answer to these initiatives and to these directions. You know, we have a lot of Georgia residents, I'm sure a lot of Arkansas residents, who want to engage in economic growth and opportunity. But some of them, so say our foreign-born residents or students, they may be highly skilled or credentialed. They may have a lot from their home country, but it's not recognized in the United States. So those of you who work with English language learners know exactly what I'm talking about. You have someone who comes in with a master's degree, or, you know, we've had a dentist in our program who had to start from the beginning and wasn't able to practice as a dentist because of our credentialing system. And so a lot of those students have to start from scratch, or they have to figure out a different pathway if they're unable to get their credentials validated. Other students may have a lot of potential or the desire to enter a specific career field, but they face a lot of barriers and a lot of challenges. And we see that in many of the lives of our adult education students. So at Georgia Piedmont, we really are committed to creating a clear path for economic growth and opportunity while recognizing the skills and educations that students may have already, or by providing new skills. And so we really wanted to take advantage of that through these program offerings. So we've done that through a program that we've named Ready Step Leap, because who wants to talk to a student about joining an IET program? I mean, really. So we talked a lot about how we were going to market IETs to our students, because it's hard enough for us to even share that program information with our families and friends. I have difficulty telling people what I do. And so to try and explain that to our students was a challenge. And so this is the way we branded the IET for our program. And so Ready is that refers to our traditional adult education classes. So that's kind of the entry point to the program. So students enroll in those GED or HiSET classes or in our ESL and civics classes. And that's kind of the starting point for their journey through this path. So STEP is the second part of the path. That is our academic bridge and industry bridge. So it's a bridge program that we've designed to better prepare students for pathway courses. And this is the part that I'm going to focus on a lot more in a few minutes. And then finally, LEAP as just a variety of career pathway programs. So typically 3 weeks to 1 semester long, where we offer an industry recognized credentialing in a high demand career field. I'm sure all of you recognize these keywords that I'm saying. And so, the different ones that we offer currently, we have cybersecurity fundamentals, we have manufacturing ready. We just started a certified nursing assistant pathway on Monday. We're really excited about, and then the workplace literacy program that Dr. McBride mentioned earlier. And ultimately, our goals for this program is, to educate. And throughout the program, we do this through concurrent, contextualize. Again, I'm speaking your language, but throughout the program, our students continue to receive that adult education instruction along with any additional industry instruction they receive. We want to engage students in economic opportunities, including credentialing in a high wage career field. And we really work with having employers who are available and who are ready to hire students when they exit these programs. And then finally, equipping students to have a clear pathway to skilled employment, and preferably in their own career field or that aligns with their experiences or their career aspirations. We don't want to just offer these for the sake of offering an IET. We want these to be relevant and important and applicable for our students. So when we began these programs, it was a lot like this photo. We were trying to give students these opportunities. We didn't really provide a great path for them to follow, nor did we provide the support that they needed. So our first industry pathway course was in manufacturing, and we did that in the early spring, and we quickly identified a need. Our students went straight from their adult education classes into the manufacturing program, and they just weren't ready. They didn't have the vocabulary they needed. They were facing a lot of high-level reading, difficult texts, even some math content that was too high, and the pace was too fast. And so we recognized that ESL level 600 and ABE, our high-level ABE classes, they just weren't enough. They weren't preparing students the way they should. And I tried to give a little bit of manufacturing instruction, but I could not help them either. So I was unprepared. So it really was a learning experience for us. And students who went through that program did eventually get their forklift and OSHA certifications, but they did not get the certified manufacturing associate, which was our ultimate goal for them. And so because of that, we realized that we needed to do something different. And so we created a solution by adding a bridge to complete the pathway. And so we already had this model in our ESL program with our academic bridge class. So this is a class that is offered to our ESL students who are interested in either moving on to the GED HiSET program or who are interested in college or university classes. And so it provides some critical thinking skills, some academic reading and writing, things that they just don't get in their advanced ESL classes. And so that had already been a very successful model. And so we were able to take that and apply it to our IET model. And so what we did was we created an industry-related bridge class in order to better prepare students for these specific career pathways. And so the bridge class focuses on vocabulary from the field. So it preps them for the vocabulary that they're going to encounter and when they enter the industry course. It provides extra digital skills, which are sometimes needed with these pathways. language and reading skills that aren't covered in their adult education classes. So it really provides some extra preparation for them. And so we piloted our first bridge class this summer, and we did it in our cybersecurity fundamentals class. And the students who went through that pilot, through that bridge class, are now they're actually finishing, this is their last week in the actual industry, the cybersecurity industries pathway. And it's an incredibly different experience. Those students are highly engaged. They're familiar with the content. They're doing really well. They're succeeding in the program. And so it's a much better success story than our attempt at manufacturing. And so we're really excited for those results, and we're excited to then expand that across our program and all of our industry pathways. So that's our ultimate goal. We want to expand this bridge program to all of our pathways, but we need curriculum. And I see the question, is this online? This particular bridge course was online. We're kind of determining that as we go, depending on what the bridge program is. But curriculum is a challenge, right? Because, we have some resources for IETs, and of course we have our adult education materials, but finding a curriculum for this bridge program is very challenging. There's not a lot out there that kind of provides that preparation for the industry pathway. And so our vision is to bring together adult education instructors and industry pathway instructors and create a working group so that those individuals can build a curriculum that's applicable to the industry and that would give the students the information they need and the specific information. We don't want to overload them with too much. We don't want to underprepare them. So the best way to do that is to partner with the instructors who teach those industry courses. We would house this in Blackboard. So this would be another course that we would build out and structure in Blackboard. And that would make it something that we could then replicate and use over and over again. And also we hope to scale this because the other colleges around Georgia are using Blackboard. It would be easily something that we could share with other programs and make replicable around the state. And, really we find that, or we have found that this is a good practice for IETs particularly, and we want to be able to share that with others and collaborate with other schools and other states for that. So in order to do that, we need some more instructors, we need the curriculum. So we are looking into funding sources and applying for state funds and federal funds, and really hoping to open up some new opportunities and new pathways for our students. We're also looking for creative partnerships to help build these things. And so in answer to a question about the progression, so the GED and HiSET is typically completed during this process. And so students don't have to have their GED or HiSET in hand and then go to a bridge and then an industry. We want them to be able to do it all together. And that really is the goal of an IET, to fast pace that skilling and credentialing while they're finishing up their adult education program. So that's a great question. So I want to share a student's perspective, because it's one thing for me to share about the program and what we've done, but I think it's really impactful to hear from a student. And so this is Marbella. She's one of our ESL students who graduated in June, actually. So this is a picture of her at graduation with our college president. She's a really strong student, and she is a student that went through our cybersecurity fundamentals bridge and pathway courses. And it really was the perfect opportunity for her because Marbella has a master's degree in information technology from Venezuela, but has not been able to find a job in her career field. And so This aligned perfectly with her skills and her educational background. And she's actually, since starting the program, she has gotten a job in her field. So we're really proud of the things that she's accomplished. And I'm going to play this video, and it's just a couple of minutes of her sharing her experience, specifically in this pathway course and in the bridge course.
Hi, my name is Marbella Otero. I am from Venezuela. I live with my sister and I have a daughter. In my home country, I got more than 10 years of IT and security experience. I have a bachelor's degree in computer science and a master in IT and management. I started studying with Peachmont Technical College, taking ESL classes. Then one day I got an email about a new computer class, great news for me because I really want a job in my field, and that will be the perfect opportunity for me. So they actually offer a pre-class called ESL Computer Bridge. Brilliance, because not everyone in the class have a technical background. So they base us in the same level before start the real class. So in this class we learn about basic vocabulary, terminology, principles of technology, security, networking, everything that will give us a good base to start the real class, the cybersecurity class. So we got a very good teacher and we learned a lot. Yes, I am pretty thankful for the bridge class and of course the cybersecurity class. And well, I really appreciate this opportunity. Thank you. Bye.
Good, Mary?
Yeah, sorry about that. Hold on, just let me pull my PowerPoint slides up. Almost made it through with no technical difficulty. Just one
That
minute.
video of Marbella, we were actually invited to share while Mary's pulling that back up. We got that recording because we were invited to share our Ready Step Leap program with the Georgia House of Representatives, and it was their hope and expectation that we could replicate this statewide. So that's how we got this on this grant. And Marbella was our testimony, so she was a hit with our legislators. So I'm glad she wasn't able to make it to our meeting that day because we have this wonderful recorded testimony that we can now share with everyone. Oh, is it my turn, Mary?
It is, yes.
Okay, good. So as we have reflected a lot, I am, the theme of this conference is about transformation, and you really can't have transformation without reflections on what your perspectives are now compared to what they were before. And that is how transformation truly occurs, is to look back and talk about what you've done and see how far you've come and where else you can go. So these are some of the things that we reflected on over the last year and a half. First of all, we take the lead from our state, and we try and we want to be the leader college. That's actually our motto here, is the leader college. We want to be in the lead statewide in what we do. So when our state gives us an idea, we take it and run with it. And a lot of times we start the ideas and then the state takes it and runs with them. That's who we want to be here at Georgia Piedmont. And so as you can see, the state has come up with things, and we try and make it ours. We'd rather be the one driving the bus than following the others. So that's that's how we operate here at Georgia Piedmont. I hope you've been able to see how we've done that today. Secondly, this pandemic disrupted everything on a global scale, literally everything about everything we do. And it's been awful and it's been traumatizing, but we have made a lot of wonderful things as a consequence of this pandemic. So we saw this existential crisis as an opportunity to evolve and become better. And we will never be the same program we were before the pandemic. And we're keeping a lot of the stuff that we made to survive and turning that into who we are now. So even though it's been a terrible 18 months, in terms of everything that a pandemic brings, we are better because of it. We have a stronger team, we have more to offer, and we're really excited about our future. And then finally, capitalizing on team talent. I could not have done this alone. I never wanted to be the hero for my program. I had no idea what I was doing. There's no book for how to lead during a pandemic. And so I really relied on my staff. And as I mentioned earlier, thankfully I had been in this position when the pandemic came. I think I had been in the position for about 18 months, maybe a little less. And I knew who my staff was and what their skills were, what their strengths were, what motivated them. And so I just plucked people from different places and I was like, you're going to work on Blackboard, you're going to work on IETs, whatever we needed to work on. I put certain people in charge and I empowered them, and I really stepped out of the way a little bit. I'm always involved, but I wasn't directing. With Blackboard, Mary Baxter, and then another one of my staff, Chastity, they were the team that built that, and that was their we kind of co-constructed the vision, but they actualized it in the way that they knew how, the way that they saw fit. They were the experts in delivering instruction. I've never, as I told y'all in my keynote, I've never taught adult ed, but Mary knew how to do that, and so did Chastity, and so they put together our Blackboard, and we've really been able to do a lot of fantastic things as a team. And so that's why I had to bring Mary here with me today. I could not have even delivered this by myself. Mary helps tell our story. She's actually published an article about our story. And so this is what we do now. We just like to tell our story, and that's why I always have to bring her along, because she's such an integral part of it. So those are our reflections. Here is our contact information. I promised you all in the keynote I would give you my contact information. Somebody already added me on Facebook. So usually I get a lot of LinkedIn invitations after this. So please connect with me. And there's Mary. If you want to know how to do something, Mary's the one. But otherwise, there's both of our contact information. I'd love to hear from you. I'm sure Mary would too. If you have any questions or have any thoughts about what we're doing, and if anybody has a moment that they want to share anything that's similar to what you're doing, we have a few minutes left. So actually, we did pretty good, Mary. We took 55 minutes of our time.
We did. Yeah, but we would love to hear from you all, or take any other questions that you have, or again, hear about your experiences.
Well, I will say that from listening to you and Mary, Arkansas is doing a lot of the same things. So it's good to know that we're all going towards the same goal. So
Go ahead.
I was going to say, if anyone else has any questions, right now is the time that you can unmute yourself and ask Dr. McBride or Mary.
We're a quiet bunch.
Normally we aren't.
I've been chatting a lot with Elizabeth in the chat. So Deborah just turned her camera on. Deborah, you want to say something? Can't hear you. You're not on mute, but I can't hear you. Might be having a mic issue. Well, while you're figuring that out, Deborah, I'm going to try and answer Barbara's question here. That's a really good question, Barbara. So, I still can't hear you, Deborah. Keep working. We allow the workplace literacy classes to take place on site if they can allow the students to log into one of our online classes. I do not have the staff to send someone out to a site to do the teaching. So either they have to come to campus and integrate with our face-to-face students, or as in my most recent MOU with an employer, they provided a classroom. And so each student has a computer and a headset, and they're registered for whatever class is best for their level. So there's an ABE1, he's in the ABE1 class, he logs into that from his employer, but he's taking classes with other students. And then there's an ABE3, so he logs into a different class. So I hope that answers your question. We just don't have the staffing to put people everywhere. Corrections, we're using Blackboard. So the security guard will log into Blackboard. We actually have to use a guest link. We've had some firewall issues in the jails, but they log in to Collaborate just like we would log in here to Zoom. We have a camera set up in the jail in the classroom. And so the teacher can see the students and the students can see the teacher. We have a projector on, no, each student's at a computer actually. So the students can, I forgot, I went to the jail and saw this. They each have a computer so they can, you know, if the teacher puts something up on Collaborate, the students can write on it or type into the chat or whatever they want to do. It's really just like any other classroom. They're just incarcerated. Oh, that was your question, Deborah? Okay. I saw you did not commit the crime of not unmuting yourself. I think your mic is just messed up. Any other questions? And also the jails had a really hard, you know, they were not remote instruction when the pandemic happened. We've had it was a major challenge getting the technology in. There was a supply chain issue with technology, but all three of our jails were able to install the technology, need to teach and tape remotely. They had to whitelist the Blackboard so that we could get our internet firewalls. And another challenge has been lockdowns because of like the Delta, for example. One of our jails has to move the inmates around the jail, so the Delta's got them locked down. But another one of our jails, the inmates stay in their pod, so we don't have to lock down there because they're all around each other anyway. So we've been able to continue teaching in those two jails despite the Delta variant. Feel free to ask any more questions. That's one of the things, I think it's an unsung initiative, getting jails remotely wired in the pandemic. I'm very proud of that, but not many people ask about that story. But
The prisons have in Arkansas also have had some problems as far as whitelisting some of our websites as well. So a lot of the correction facilities have been letting the teachers drop packets off for them.
yeah,
And then I guess, just interacting that way. But now that they're starting to open back up a little bit more, it's getting a little bit easier to get a teacher in or to set up the links.
yeah, our jails were kind of waiting on the pandemic to blow over before they were like, okay, it's not blowing, we'll just do remote.
That's exactly right.
Oh, yeah. I'm getting questions in the chat, but they're directed just at me, so I'm going to answer those in the chat.
Okay. So if we don't have any more questions, I'd just like to thank Dr. McBride and Ms. Mary so much for taking the time out and speaking with us on what's going on in Georgia and enlightening us and helping guiding us to things that we might be going towards as well. I am going to put in the SurveyMonkey link in our chat box. So if you will just follow the SurveyMonkey link, or if you'll click on it, it'll take you to the link, and we'll do a survey. And I think that's also where you can get a certificate for attending this breakout. And all of the breakouts are recorded, so you should be able to go back and watch them over and over and over again as well.
Thank you all so much for having us. It really has been a pleasure.
Yes, thank you so much.
Thank y'all for being here. I really do appreciate it. All right. And as far as everyone else, we will have a little break. We have another session, our special presentation, which is the trauma-informed teaching practices for adult education, will start at 1:45. So if you'll have about a 13-minute break. So go ahead and get up, stretch your legs, get a break. But you will have to join on that link. So this link, once we end it, it will end and you'll have to go to the new link for that one. But thank you all for all your participation and I appreciate you. Thank you.
Darissa, thank you for being such a great
Thank
moderator
you.
and for allowing us the opportunity to do this.
Thank you.
Thanks.